Welcome, Girish.
Thanks, Pranav.
We just completed a video on speculative, going long and going short by a speculator.
Yes.
And we were discussing that hedging is generally used by importers and exporters.
Yes, because they have a real exposure in the market.
Real exposure in the market.
Real exposure in the sense that exporter is receiving dollars from abroad, and the importer, which he has to pay in dollars.
Absolutely.
So they are the real person who are susceptible to the foreign exchange fluctuation.
Absolutely.
So we are going to do this hedging
and
from the perspective of exporters and importers.
And you said something very important. Hedging is not done to maximize profit, but to minimize loss.
So it should not be considered as a tool wherein you can earn some profit from the market. It is strictly a tool to minimize your losses.
So this is very important. Kindly remember this, that all hedging strategies will be based on the concept of minimizing loss and not maximizing profit.
Yeah, that is the most important thing.
So let's go back to our video and see.
And by the definition, it means taking a position in futures market that is opposite to the position in the physical market in order to reduce risk associated with the exchange rate.
Absolutely.
Now, very important thing is that you're taking an opposite position.
Right.
Why do you take an opposite position? We have already specified.
Because in hedging you are trying to minimize your risk. Absolutely.
So when you are gaining from one market, you are losing in the other market. So that all in all your losses are minimized.
Absolutely.
So if you take a similar position in both the markets, so either you will make more profits or you will incur more losses.
Absolutely. Either you will have tremendous gains or tremendous losses. Which is not hedging in any case, which will be speculative.
So the objective of hedging is to minimize your losses.
Okay.
So and we are talking about two types of position: underlying position and a hedging position, which is totally opposite of underlying position.
Right.
We can better understand from the perspective of an exporter.
Right.
So for him, an underlying position would be the receivables which is getting from an export proceeds.
Right.
So if, for example, if he is exporting something to US, the dollars which he is expecting are his underlying position.
Yes.
And if we want to take a hedging position, he'll take a position in the currency futures market, which would be totally opposite to the underlying position.
So let's now look at this example in detail. What Girish is saying is that, for example, there's an exporter and he's into export of, let's say, machineries, and he expects dollar payments for the machineries that he supplied. If he has to hedge his risk, what he'll do is,
now first of all you should be very specific what type of risk he is exposed to.
Okay.
For an exporter, what would be a risk?
So let's try and understand the risk of an exporter.
For him, strictly a risk would be, currency risk would be depreciation of dollar.
Currency risk is dollar depreciation.
Right. So this is his risk, which is susceptible to, because if dollar depreciates,
naturally
then
his payments go down, and he's already supplied the machinery, so there's a possibility that he might just incur losses.
So if we can take numerical values also. For example, if he is expecting $50,000,
let's take $50,000 is what he's expecting,
and currently the prevalent spot rate is say 45 rupees.
45 rupees is the spot rate.
Depreciation of dollar here would mean dollar coming down to 44 or 43.
So the risk is that now the rupee stands at 43, and
he's losing 2 rupees.
So he's losing 2 rupees.
This is his real exposure in the market
per contract, or the real exposure which is there.
Right.
So there's a possibility that almost, like, if you look at it from that perspective, it's almost gone down by 5%. So it's just a 5% fall which he's expecting.
So when we talk about hedging, and we said that hedging is taking an opposite position in the currency futures market. So what will he do to hedge his position?
What will he do to hedge his position? So what he'll do is that he'll make the thing, he'll take it at 43 only. He'll expect the dollar to depreciate.
So he'll short the currency.
He'll short the currency.
He'll short US dollar
because USD.
This is the only risk which he is susceptible to.
Right.
So if he shorts the dollar, he'll gain in the currency future market but lose in the spot market.
Absolutely.
So this is the important point which we are trying to emphasize, that why he takes a opposite position, because he's taking hedging as a tool to minimize his risk.
So basically, I mean, in nutshell, I mean, if you just look at it from close proximity, what it comes down to is that, I mean, you take a position in which the risk is there.
Yes.
So if you feel that if your risk is that the rupee will go down, you will naturally short.
That is the only risk which a exporter is exposed to.
Absolutely.
Right? If USD appreciates, it is well and good for him because it will add on to his profit.
Right.
But he is keeping this thing in mind that he wants to hedge his loss. That's why he's taking an opposite position.
Absolutely. So I mean, in nutshell, I mean, if I can just summarize, is you're actually taking a position where you feel the risk is there.
Yes. Because
so
you want to hedge against
absolutely.
that risk.
You will take the position which means that you're expecting that risk to happen.
Yes.
And naturally that is automatically hedging against the position that you have.
Yeah. So on the basis of this, we can classify hedges into two types.
Yeah.
One is a long hedge
and one is a short hedge.
Is a short hedge. So what is a long hedge? It basically depends upon the position which you are taking in the currency futures market.
Right.
So in a long hedge, you'll take a long position in currency futures market, which would be completely opposite to the.
So let's look at it like this. Now X is there. He makes machine raise. Current price is 45. And let's say the delivery has to and the payments will be made 3 months later.
Right.
So there are two things that can happen. One is that he expects and he wants to hedge against 45. The only possibility is that the market goes down to 43. Right.
So what
he'll do is he'll go short.
Short USD in currency futures market.
Short USD in currency futures.
So this type of hedge we call it as a short hedge.
And this would naturally means he is gone. This is a short hedge. Similarly, if we just rotate the thing and we have Y, who imports machineries, so a very important difference. X was exporting. So now this gentleman has to, again the current price is 45, and he has to make the payments 3 months down the line. And for him the risk is that the dollar would appreciate. So his expectation or risk, which he's scared of, let's put it like that, is that the dollar might go to 47. So he'll actually go long on USD.
Long USD and contract.
In currency futures.
It means that he'll be taking a long hedge.
And he's doing a long hedge.
So basically you name the hedge on the basis of the position which you are taking in the currency futures market.
Absolutely.
And this would be completely opposite to the position which you have in the underlying market.
Absolutely.
So in this case, in the case of X, when he is shorting in the currency futures market, it means he is long in the open position.
And naturally, because
his exposure is,
yes, because you are hedging against the risk that you have, and if you feel that the risk is that the market will appreciate, you will take a position where you want the market to appreciate in a risk format, and similarly vice versa. So I think hedging can be we can take it forward from here and see the size of hedge that we were talking about.
Size of hedge, there are two types of hedge. One is an equal hedge, another is an optimal hedge.
Okay.
Slightly confusing because when you look at it, equal hedge says that when the size of underlying position is equal to the size of hedging position, it is known as equal hedge. Whereas when the changes in the spot market are negatively correlated with the changes in the future price, they perfectly offset each other. It means you are taking an optimal hedge.
Okay.
Right. So it seems a little bit confusing.
I think we'll have to go do this in a little detail just to explain what an equal and an optimal hedge means.
So if you can take,
we'll go to the notepad. Yeah.
So for example, an exporter takes has an exposure of say $50,000.
So we are taking an example of equal hedge.
Yeah, equal hedge.
Okay. Exporter X
has an exposure of $50,000.
$50,000.
And he takes a position in currency futures market, taking 50 contracts, which would be equivalent to $50,000.
He takes 50 contracts because yes, one contract equals to $1,000. Yes.
So the total value would be $50,000.
Yes.
This is an example of equal hedge. Here
Okay.
the size are same.
So what you are saying is an equal hedges in terms of contract size.
Right. Okay,
In
we'll come to this.
In terms of contract size, you just have an equal exact amount of things, so you call it the equal hedge.
Equal hedge. Now in an optimal hedge,
Right, so this is equal, and let's look at let's change the color, and let's look at optimal hedge. Sorry, yeah,
we're talking of optimal hedge.
yeah,
This is a type of a hedge wherein he had taken a position in currency future market which completely negates the profit or loss which he incurs in the spot market or in real market. For example, he has sold something at 45.
let's take the same example and let's work it out backwards. X has 50,000 is USD is his exposure.
Yeah.
And in the currency futures contract, what he does is, instead of buying the contract of equal size,
Yeah.
he looks at the value difference that can happen
Yes.
because the market changes.
He can take a equal hedge. If basically optimal hedge can be a part of equal hedge. The thing is that if he loses 2000, say for example 2000 rupees
Right.
in the spot market, wherein we're talking about the real exposure.
Yes.
Similarly, he gains 2000 rupees in the currency futures market. So all in all, his loss is zero.
Okay. So let's
That is
take it like this. 50,000 USD. What he expects is, let's do it that backward. What he expects is, he expects the market to and this was at 45 rupees. He expects market to go at 44. So he expects a loss of 1 into 50. 1 into 50. 1 into
50,000.
50,000.
So he incurs a loss of,
He incurs a loss of 50,000 rupees.
yeah.
Example. So what he does is, he says, instead of taking a position which is an equal hedge,
Yeah.
he says, I just want
He takes a position in currency future market
to
where
take a
he
position which will hedge for 50,000 rupees, which is his net gain or loss, which is this.
Yes.
So he might just say, okay, and 50,000 rupees, he could take a position of, and if you're looking at 45, he can take a position of how much? We'll have to go and do a little divisibility rule, but
Now, if he takes a position, say at 44, say 45 in the currency futures market, because he'll be shorting that currency,
right,
and the currency comes to 44, he'll be gaining 1 rupees into 50 contracts. So
Right.
net he'll be gaining 50,000 rupees in the currency futures
yeah.
market.
So what he can do is actually is that for when he can just take 1,000 USD contract size and hedge against that. He just needs to make sure that 50,000 rupees is saved.
Yeah.
Right. It's not a question of taking an absolute equal hedge in contract
Right.
size. He can just take even 1,000 USD contract size and multiply it by the expectation of the movement that he is expecting.
So
And
he
he could-
expects a 5 rupees movement in this case.
Right. So he's expecting, let's say, a 5 rupees movement in this case, and he can take a position equivalent to that.
10 contracts if he takes.
So you're saying that he takes 10 contracts at 5 rupees plus movement.
Yeah.
So this is something that he can do. So that would be an optimal hedge where he just looks at the differential,
Yeah.
not at the contract size.
Right.
Okay.
Here the objective in optimal hedge is that he negates his profit in the currency futures market from the losses in the real exposure which he is having in the spot market.
So you're saying he negates the losses
From the underlying exposure
in
the spot market.
in the spot market. Yeah.
With the profit
With the profit
in the currency
in
futures.
currency futures.